Welcome to the FanDuel quarterback analysis for Week 17. I'm Jason Gilbert, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at QBs this week, and there's a fair amount of options I think you can go with, finding some games that are high totals, games that matter. But, here in FanDuel, I just feel like there's, quite a bit of options, but there's only one real elite.
I have to give it to FanDuel. I've enjoyed their lineup construction quite a bit this year in terms of the quarterback position. I feel like it does hurt you. Quarterback does hurt you some weeks. And there also are big enough price gaps to where, you can think about, I know you mentioned Blake Bortles in week 17. And you don't just have to fire away with, Aaron Rodgers, which I guess we can get right into. Clear top play. He's going to be the chalk, but it's good chalk. Oh, he scored 37 points last week. I think he's right in that range again this week, honestly. It's really tough to fade him for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. You look last time these two played, 26 points, 4 touchdowns, 205 yards. He wasn't even a big yardage guy, but 4 touchdowns comes along. Always has that rushing touchdown upside as well.
Yeah.
Do or die, they got to win. It just seems to be Rodgers, Nelson, Gideon.
Even in a lot of Rodgers games, the upside's kind of not like a Drew Brees, because once the Packers get up by a relatively big margin, they start to run. This is different. This is going to be pedal to the metal the entire game. They're going to score 45 points if they can. So, this is probably one of the easiest quarterback calls of all season, especially with the way he's playing. But I think there are reasonable options. There are reasonable alternatives. It's just don't question him as the top guy right now,
And so, looking at the pricing, Tom Brady's up there. I'm not really looking at Brady this week. Matt Ryan for 100 less. I just think the running game is much more where I'm attracted to this week against New Orleans for Atlanta. Julio Jones somewhat limited. I don't feel comfortable playing a naked Matt Ryan and banking on his touchdowns to go to Justin Hardy or Aldrick Robinson. I just don't trust it to go those ways. So I don't think I can play Matt Ryan this week. On FanDuel.
I'm with you. Ryan has had that super high floor in the second half, but he hasn't really had that upside because the guys you mentioned, Taylor Gabriel rushing touchdowns, Tevin Coleman. When you look at the Falcons' offense this year, it's been incredible, but the collective dominance of everyone has kind of limited the ceiling of a player like Matt Ryan. Realistically, Matt Ryan should have way over 40 touchdowns right now, honestly. But 14 touchdowns from Devontae Freeman, only 2 rushing, and Tevin Coleman with, 8 rushing touchdowns on just a joke for Matt Ryan. He's the clear MVP for me. But getting back to the fantasy aspect, it's tough when Rodgers is just 100 more to really logically go with Ryan here. That's the conundrum. I guess you can go there just in the hopes that maybe Detroit holds Rodgers, but I just have a hard time seeing that happening, I guess.
Yeah, the price difference isn't there, and I think out of this top tier, Andrew Luck is a little bit banged up in a relatively tougher matchup against this Jacksonville secondary game that doesn't mean anything. I don't see any real need to use him. Big Ben sitting. We start to get down to the next tier of guys where Drew Brees at 8,200, I think, is maybe your first real pivot off of Rodgers, and kind of hoping for that back and forth game down in Atlanta where games have been great for fantasy production. Great stacking partners of Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks. I think that's where I think you first make your big GPP move and kind of swerve.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the upside is finally there for Drew Brees in week 17. He doesn't care. His team could be 1-14 and he's going balls to the wall. And I think, with the way Brandon Cooks has complained this year about targets, he just wants his targets. So I think this is a great game. It should go back and forth. I think you can play Brees with the Falcons running backs, as you mentioned. I think you can go with Cooks. I think you can go with Michael Thomas. So I'm down for Breeze for sure. 8,200, 600 off certainly opens up some more room down cheaper. But I mean, as you mentioned, you are playing Breeze. You play Jordy,
Yeah,
you can still get that exposure to Rodgers. I think that's kind of just how you have to play these top tier. And Stafford at 8K, I think you play Jordy or Adams with him pretty much in all those lineups because if Stafford's going to be the QB1, that means he's in an absolute shootout. So, I think Stafford's okay at 8. I like Breeze more though, I think.
I do too. It's a different process from DraftKings where Stafford was 6K. There was a
Right.
huge difference. But yeah, I completely agree. I think Jordy Nelson is your Packers exposure if you're not going with Rodgers. And you can still get Breeze exposure through Cooks and Thomas. That's the great thing about those passing attacks is there's no wrong way to kind of get exposure to two of the higher upside passing attacks for Week 17.
Right. And Stafford's been above 24 points 4 times this year. If he can get into that 24 to 27 range, if Rodgers gets 31, you're like okay with that. And then if you get the other side with Tate and Jordy, you're pretty much right there. So the quarterback wouldn't matter as much. So I just think you have to be very aware of the correlation this week because these games are going to be super important.
Yeah, I mean, 27 last time out against Green Bay. Rodgers went up big, and that was one of the reasons that you talked about. He threw only 205 yards. Yeah, they were up, 3-4 touchdowns,
Right.
at the half. And then we saw Stafford in garbage time and comeback mode.
Mm-hmm.
This next tier, I know we talked about a little bit, which is Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston. Because Breeze is only 300, 400 more, I don't quite know if I can go Kirk Cousins on FanDuel. It's completely different from DK. I know Kirk Cousins is playing with a lot on the line. Same with Jameis Winston, but they just take Stafford and Breeze just take him out of the picture for me.
Yeah, Breeze is right there. I mean, I feel like we say this some weeks, and it's still worth. I think it's still worth throwing in a Kirk Cousins in a tournament. But if you're just looking at cash. I think you have to go Breeze there. If you're just choosing between the two, who's got the highest floor, who's got the highest ceiling, it's Breeze in both scenarios. But Cousins has surprised us quite a bit this year, or surprised me, I should say. Certainly has some upside. Certainly has Deshaun there, making big plays this year, and especially the last, month or so. So I'm not against it. I just think. If you're being honest, Stafford and Breeze probably the better plays.
So I think what I would take away from that is basically Kirk Cousins. I'm only playing him in a stack. I'm only playing him with Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon and Crowder if I wanted to. I'm only tossing in a random Washington stack.
I'm really only doing it to be different. Yeah, honestly.
You're hoping Cousins breaks off a 3 touchdown game and then rushes one in.
Right.
2 of them go to Pierre Garçon, one long 80-yard bomb to Deshaun Jackson. That possibility is there.
Right.
So, but yeah.
So, and then I think you go with Winston maybe to – it's tough to see upside on Winston since they started shutting Evans down. That Evans and him are connected at the hip in terms of fantasy production. Winston hasn't showed a ton of upside. He had those 2 big games early in the year. Against the Rams and the Falcons, but beyond that, hasn't really shown much upside in the last 2 to 3 months. So that's the majority of the season. I don't think we're loving that. Kind of tough to go at him even with this Carolina defense.
Yeah, I think so. Hasn't been over 20 FanDuel points since the first game in November. So yeah, I'm with you. I think overall he's just kind of a fade. Even in a good spot, yeah, the upside isn't comparable to any of those other guys that we've mentioned so far.
And I guess in this range, not touching Dak, you're not really looking at Eli Manning. They're probably going to sit. I don't want to touch Cam. What about this Bills-Jets game? What do you think? Because these 2 teams are ugly. These defenses suck at this stage in the season. I don't like these offenses. But when I look at a Bilal Powell, when I look at like a Tyrod Taylor, I'm like, oh, is there that chance that I'm sitting there at like 2 in the afternoon, instantly regretting not getting more exposure to this game? Like I know EJ Manuel's starting, but like this game I want to talk about. Like, what do we do with it? Like the Bills are giving up 200-yard rushers. Like, could EJ Manuel like make this happen?
So I look at this game and what I wish is everyone was ruled out.
I know.
So
Like
I don't have
EJ
to
Manuel,
play anyone.
EJ Manuel's the min, like 5K. Like you don't need it this week, but he has Sammy Watkins. Like I don't know. I don't know.
So I like Watkins. I like
Weird
Clay
game.
this week. It just EJ Manuel being under center dampens my hope a little bit. I still
know.
think Watkins has big play upside against this Jets team. I
What
really do.
what do you think EJ Manuel's floor is? I guess we can talk about because, projections are projections, but there's no projection system that's going to tell you what EJ Manuel's going to do this weekend.
12, 13, 14.
So if he gets that at 5K, like he's not killing you. And if he gets a rushing touchdown and gets like 17, like you're in decent shape.
But as you said, you don't need it this week. That's the thing. You don't need a 5K EJ Manuel. It's fun to toss.
I'm kind of just playing devil's advocate because I do think this game with LaShawn McCoy, with Bilal Powell, with some of these players, I think it could get loose.
If you're playing early only, there's no Breeze, there's no Stafford, there's no Rodgers on that slate.
Yeah,
there's no Wilson.
And that's more what I mean on the early only slate. Some weeks you just look down at 2 and you're like, oh my God, I didn't get any exposure to this team. Yeah. And like last week for me, I didn't have any Charles Clay, and I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think in an early only slants, because a lot of those top quarterbacks are out of play, I don't mind it. I think it's an interesting way to go, especially if you're building 20 lineups. You got to toss an EJ Manuel.
That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
So,
more realistic play though. Blake Bortles, I think, is a guy you were talking about as you're kind of interested in. It looked great last week after an abysmal season. Finally looked like the Blake Bortles from last year against a little less resistance on defense. Is that something we can see continue against this Colts team?
Yeah, put up 25, nearly 26 against him earlier this year. So, let's be honest, Bortles has been bad, but fantasy production, obviously, of late hasn't been good. Tennessee, he was great. Houston, though, still a good pass defense. Minnesota was bad, good pass defense. Denver, bad, good pass defense. And other than that, has been in that 15 to 18 range, but also can push that 25, point ceiling as well. So, I don't mind him at 7,600. I think his stacking partner is what makes him the most attractive. Marquise Lee, Allen Robinson, still uber cheap. Good correlation in that game with using like Hilton. So for early only, I'm probably going to hammer the Jags quite a bit.
I like it. Yeah, I think so too. I think you can get Robinson exposure and like it for the second week now. This could be a nice redemption story if he gives us back-to-back good weeks. So certainly like that. Is there anyone else lower you're looking at? Carson Palmer, Joe Flacco versus kind of a beat-up Bengals. Any upside down here?
I don't know. I guess you could say Sam Bradford 6,700. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
His passing attempts over the last 4 weeks, 45, 34, 42, and 50. The volume's certainly there.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly there.
And you can play him with superstar Adam Thielen.
Yeah, you can. You can definitely do that. And, it worked out last week. He's just Sam Bradford, he completes 75% of his passes and they just don't even get first downs half the time. It's
Yeah,
just bizarre. But I'm not going to knock it. It's definitely not a bad play.
it's not.
It's definitely not.
No, I mean one more guy I think we can talk about is Russell Wilson, 7,600. So Seattle is one of the weirdest teams I think in fantasy. I can't peg them most weeks, but they're scoring basically 14 points on the road this year, which I
Yeah.
found kind of baffling. I just figured they'd be a little bit better than that. I mean, that's the second worst in football.
Yeah.
But this is a
Um,
matchup that's prime for fantasy production because it's San Francisco, and I don't even think Thomas Rawls and Alex Collins have been all that effective, and I don't think they're going to be tremendous plays. So I'm kind of like, if they're going to score 26 points, it's got to come through Wilson at a cheap
gotta.
price.
It has to. Um, and then I think you go Baldwin, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of your
Yeah,
assessment
but
there?
I
I'm
mean,
with
Paul
you.
Richardson, God, let's get you going on Paul
I,
Richardson.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but he's only 4,500. No, on FanDuel, it's really tough to talk myself into Paul Richardson. I'm gonna be making stacks with him, but I might not suggest that to you guys as a suggestion because I care about your safety. But Doug Baldwin probably the way to go there if you do. I mean, I guess the better question is, what are you doing with Jimmy Graham at this stage? Because he's been frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get in on him. I mean, I can't see myself playing him. I mean, the upside has been really capped. The volume hasn't really been there. Got the touchdown last week, but I mean, it's been a while since he's found the end zone before that.
Hmm.
I mean, he hasn't really put together that 100-yard receiving and the touchdown. Like, I haven't seen that in forever. I think Carolina was the last time that happened.
Yeah. And so, I think we just stick with Baldwin there. But Russell Wilson, again, going to be low owned just because of the quarterbacks we talked about this week. Kind of an interesting guy to go with.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much it as far as quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I can't think of another name. I mean, no reason to play
Again, don't.
Savage.
Yeah. Don't play Eli. Don't play Tyrod Taylor. Don't play Dak Prescott. They're all going to be sitting. So unless you want zeros and to log out at 1:30, don't play those guys.
Yeah, don't play Mariota or Carr either.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
So, that's going to wrap up this week FanDuel quarterback analysis. If you want to check out the rest of our Week 17 content, head on over to digitalfantasycafe.com. If you like what we're doing on the pods, be sure to give us a thumbs up and a subscribe as well. And we'll see you guys in the playoffs.